All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the CHP podcast. I'm Ariana. I'm going to be your host today, and I am chatting with Nickademus. Nick just did the world's toughest mudder, which was what, your like second 100 miler this year or
Yep.
something like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So second style 100 mile race since heart surgery. So and
Yeah.
since doing it since this year. So yeah.
Amazing. And you came in not only top 10, but you came in sixth place overall,
Yep.
and you beat out a few names I remember seeing last year, top 10, top of the leaderboard. So that's just really, really
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I've
And just to give credit to Chris, who was the female who beat me. I placed seventh overall, sixth male.
Yes.
Just giving credit to Chris there. So yeah, she did
True,
fly
true.
by me like on the second to last lap. So
She's pretty
yeah.
nuts. Was she smiling? She's always friggin'
Oh
smiling.
yeah, no, she was smiling and having a good time and everything like that, and
Yeah.
still had good. I was really surprised. I analyzed everybody's from my background. I analyzed everybody's movement and running form and movement mechanics as they run by, and I make heavy judgments as to how far or how long they're gonna make it.
Uh-huh.
And Chris had pretty good running form still. A little bit. Her right hip was giving a little bit, but otherwise she had pretty good running mechanics still. And I was like, oh, I'm impressed for like 95 miles into the race.
Yeah,
So
she's kind of I met her at the Spartan Games, and
okay,
we became really good friends, and I love her attitude, and she's completely like what you saw on race day of her just like smiling and like that's how she does
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
how she does everything. I love
Okay,
that about
cool.
her. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
No,
I
it looked like she deserved to be up there in the 100 mile range too. Just she's done a lot of you don't see that with the OCR folks often, how she looked like she'd done, I forget if it was Bear 100 or Wasatch 100, but she's done quite a few 100 milers, like traditional 100 milers in
yeah.
addition to World's Toughest Mudder. And
Yeah.
yeah, I was telling the couple athletes that I had out there that I was training for the event and everything through CHP, who want to do it again this next year. I was telling them
Yeah.
that we need to go out and we need to do a couple 100 mile races before WTM. That way you've done 100 miles on your feet, you know what it feels like. And I
Hmm.
think that's going to be the piece that for them, they're right around that 75, 80 mile mark for the 24 hours at WTM. And
Yeah.
they want to move up to that 90-mile range. But I think the
That's
next step
big.
to help close that gap is going to be doing a few 100 milers, just running race 100 milers. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think
yeah.
that's really, really smart too, because I've got to imagine, I mean, I've never run that far. So, but
Yeah.
I've got to imagine exposing yourself to 100 miles of running with obstacles is sort of like going to train for a 10K, but like never actually running 10K and also throwing obstacles constantly into your race. Like you never
Right.
actually get a
Right.
feel for what it feels like to run
The
100
10K.
miles or the
Yeah.
10K.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
you're just
Yeah.
confusing yourself. And I feel like knowing you can run a 10K and then doing a more difficult 10K, which is what I would consider WTM, is
Yep.
more difficult. Um, I feel like knowing that you've got those miles on your feet at least has got to be great for your mindset and your pacing and the way that you manage your output. Because you're like, okay, I've done
Definitely.
100 miles. All I need to do is just stay feeling like I did.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. To be
Yeah.
able to throw some obstacles and stuff in there, and then I'll be all right. But at least you psychologically, you've covered the distance and stuff like
Hmm.
that at that point. And that bit me in the ass a few times back in the day when I was doing WTM in 2014, 2015, and 2016. I did the opposite of that, where I do like 100 mile race, and it was Cruel Jewel that I remember doing in 2016, and it was 106 miles with 30,000 feet of climbing, and I did it in 23 hours and like 55 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, because well, that was 106 miles and 30,000 feet of climbing, and this race is only 18,000 feet of climbing, and
It
you
will
know
be similar. Yeah.
yeah, A equals B equals C kind of thing. And it's not
Yeah.
at all. It's a completely different thing to like slow down, get stuck in a penalty loop, have to carry something heavy,
Yeah.
use your arms for something, then throw on the wetsuit and everything like that. And you're producing at many points in this race, you're producing 13 to 18-minute miles, just constantly interrupted by something. And it's like constantly your ability to get interrupt your running, get back into running, interrupt your running, get back into running, interrupt your running, get back into running. And it's that constant pattern of, how well can you bloop, get back into it, bloop, get back into it kind of
Yeah.
thing. So
So talking about training, did you do anything in particular to prepare for WTM this year, or did you just kind of
Yeah.
going, yeah, tell me about what you did to
So
prepare.
so Jade took over all my training for it, which was
Cool.
awesome. Jade's my wife,
I love her.
and really awesome trail runner and an athlete and everything. And so, um, yeah, she had sort of trained me going into, or I'd followed her training going into this race called the Kodiak 100 that I did in August, and that was my first 100 miler back since heart surgery in 2018. And I placed fairly competitively there in second,
Hmm.
which was awesome for me. And following that event, there was about like 2 or 3 weeks where I hadn't decided on world's toughest mudder yet, but then come like early mid September, I decided, that WTM was kind of what I wanted to try, where I wanted to go.
Hmm.
Um, Mainly for psychological reasons, which I can get into in a moment, but mainly to see if I could be compassionate with myself, see if I could be kind with myself, see if I could be non-judgmental with myself, and to see how well that would produce what type of results that would produce versus this ego-driven competitive criticism harshness that I'd been at that race in the past.
Hmm.
And this race is really a litmus test for me in terms of that.
Yeah.
Just with the media and the hubbub and stuff that it gets, it's very
Ultra.
opposite of like a low-key ultra or something like that, like
Yeah.
in some guy's backyard or something. This is a race that gets a whole lot of media and a whole lot of these people and these
Yes.
names
Blah,
and
blah,
things
blah.
and these, yeah, and these all these firework things and stuff. Yeah. It's I mean, it's neat. It's fun what they make it to be. But yeah, in terms of training and everything like that, this race, I think a lot of folks still forget, or a lot of folks similar to like training for something like Barkley. I think it's easy with World's Toughest Mudder to get distracted by the obstacles and spend too much time. So I failed, just to show you how important running is. I failed. I made one grip strength obstacle once. Um,
Yeah.
Other than that, I failed every single. There was like 7 grip obstacles or something like that, and I failed every single one, and I took the penalty for every single one, every single
Yeah.
time. And I was 95 miles in sixth place, and I ran with the guy who was in first place for God. I ran with DJ for like 50 miles of the race,
Yeah. You
and what
guys
would
were neck
happen
and
is
neck.
we'd be running together, and then we'd hit a grip obstacle. He'd fly through it. I'd take the penalty. He'd get, I don't know, maybe a minute ahead of me. I'd catch him
Yeah.
because my running form efficiency at that time was just as good, if not a little bit stronger than his. And then I'd catch him, and then we'd run together. Then we'd hit a grip obstacle. I'd fall behind again. Then I'd catch him again, and we were just kind of going back and forth like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but just to show you, like, as a runner, like I failed all those grip obstacles because I didn't spend. I worked out in the last 6 weeks before the race. I used my home gym, and despite being a CHP coach, despite having my CSCS and everything like that, knowing how important strength training is and everything like that, for me personally, if I could just run, I would just run, and all I
Yeah.
would do is run,
It
because
brings
that's
you
what I
no
enjoy.
joy. Yeah.
It brings me no joy to be in the
Yeah.
gym lifting, for me personally.
Yeah.
And and so like hanging onto a bar or something like that is just like agonizing. Like I love rock climbing. I'll do rock climbing, but
Yeah.
our rocks in Sedona where we live are notoriously kind of sketchy for rock climbing.
Hmm.
Um and so yeah, I really did piss poor training in terms of grip strength and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I averaged anywhere from 70 to 90 mile weeks and stuff like that in terms of running. So my running was really on point, really strong, lots of back-to-back long runs and stuff like that in the 20s and 30s and stuff like that for those long runs. And just got to myself, got to a point where I was just feeling, like I could go do a 30 or 40 mile run, no problem.
Yeah.
At a fast, um, at a fairly fast clip and stuff like that. So yeah, when I was, in the first 3 or 4 loops of WTM clicking away at like 7:30 to 8-minute miles or whatever, that was
Yeah.
nothing out of the ordinary for what I'd been doing.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was kind of my training going into it. But certainly in terms of grip, yeah, I could tell instantly just getting on some of those like monkey bars and getting on some of those like foot disc things, and just how OCR used to just be monkey bars back when I was doing it in 2014, like it was innovative to have like a monkey bar that went up and a monkey bar that went down. That was like, woo, we're
Whoa,
getting
yeah, yeah.
innovative here. But now it's like fucking like, or now it's freaking like, I don't know, it's like banana handles and tires and
Yeah,
just weird things
it's
and foot
novelty.
discs and
Yeah,
yeah, it's gotten all complicated now, and now everything like kind of spins as well as like you grab onto it and it rotates, or so. It's all like Ninja
yeah.
Warrior now, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I am, as much as I like watching Ninja Warrior, I am not a Ninja Warrior.
You're like, I'm not about
uh,
this.
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah. There's
that kind of
definitely a not to interrupt, but there's definitely such a skill component with OCR now that I don't remember there
yeah,
being. Like, there's such
yeah,
a proficiency demand, that anyone who's good at it, I don't think they even recognize how much practice they get and how comfortable they are on obstacles that for most people are like, what? How do I use my
yeah, yeah,
hips?
yeah,
What? Like,
yeah,
how do I swing? Excuse me? What do you want me to do?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So
yeah,
there's
yeah,
just a skill. And to your point about running efficiency and actually being to a place where you are a proficient runner, I've got to imagine that's got to serve you so well in those late hours of the night when you
oh
are
totally,
still moving. Yeah, but you haven't hit your fatigue wall yet. Like, you probably
yeah,
hit that wall of a form breakdown, if you did at all, when you got into the 80s and 90s. Versus,
yeah,
I see a lot of people start to break down at mile 30 or 40 because their longest training run was 20.
yeah,
And
right, right,
I think
right, and
that's
then
super
maybe
unfortunate. Like,
yeah,
I'm not sure
yeah,
if you
and you
saw
get
that out there, but
yeah, no, for sure, yeah, the field narrows down to like there's essentially, you're kind of hoping there's a couple obstacles, the I forget if it was called the Dublin Wall or the Berlin Wall or something like that, but like 10-foot wall or something like that with a little piece of wood that you kick the wall and do sort of a jump hop up to it.
mhm.
And in the early in the race, the first like 12, 13 loops, you could sort of launch yourself over and do it solo, but later on in the race you lost that. I lost. No, everybody lost. I
Yeah.
was with the second place guy and some other guys, and everybody lost this ability to like dynamically kick and jump. And and so it was just, you were just kind of hoping at 3 a.m. that someone else was going to be there so that they could like sadly help lift you up and over, and that you could
Yeah.
then go around. And that's kind of the fun part with WTM specifically, is there's this kind of community effort to it where like, you help, someone helps you up over the obstacle and you come back around, then help them up over the obstacle, and then
Hmm.
you help a person or two and then continue going, kind of thing. And it's this
Yeah.
everybody versus the obstacles, everybody versus the night kind of thing,
Hmm.
which is fun with WTM. And you don't get a whole lot of that during ultras. You do sometimes when you're giving someone a salt pill or something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
But
It's a lot more direct when you're reaching out and
yeah,
grabbing,
help and pull them up and get them over the
meeting
thing.
your
Yeah,
competitor.
exactly.
Yeah. Like, literally face to face. Hey, man.
Yeah, no, it was exactly like that with the second place guy, Mark Gaudet, I think his name was.
Mhm.
I was like, here, step on my back, get up and over this thing, and then even though I'm like, one lap behind him trying to catch him or whatever, like, I don't know, who cares?
Yeah.
So
I've
yeah, it
loved
was
that vibe about Tough Mudder for forever. Like, just compared to other obstacle course races out there, like for Spartan and stuff, the non-linear competitiveness where it's like
yeah,
everybody's in it. Like, you're all just working to, like you said, get through the night together. Um,
yeah,
and then you peel apart when the sun comes out. But at that point, like, I don't know, there's just such camaraderie. I
yeah,
That's the experience part of it. If that probably makes it so it's made it stick so much as an event.
yeah. No, it's definitely been neat in that regard. And yeah, I did notice a lot of what your earlier point in terms of running mechanics and stuff like that. Just a lot of people, as you would expect, between 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, just walking and maintaining a walk in between the obstacles, and
Yeah.
very few of us at that point who were still running between everything. And those of us who were still running between everything were, um, I had a little 3/4 wetsuit,
Mhm.
versus like the people who were walking were much more layered up than me, just in terms of generating body heat and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
that becomes a component as well in this race. This race is very gear heavy, very gear specific and stuff, in terms of that would be like maybe 20% of this, 20, even 25% of this race is like, I'd say it's like 70% running, 20%. Let me get my percentages right. 60% running, 20% obstacle efficiency, even 15% obstacle efficiency, and then 15% gear.
Yeah,
Kind of what I would say for that, if that adds up to whatever. Hopefully that's 100%.
close. You know what? It's fine.
Yeah,
But no, I mean I get that because I two guys from the gym that I coach at did World's Toughest. And it's funny because they were like, your coach, your guy there, he's going so fast. I was like, I know. But we were all talking about wetsuits for the whole week leading up. Not their
yeah,
training, not their preparation, but just did they have enough wetsuit?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And like, did they have the gloves and did they have the hat
yeah,
and anticipating how slow they were going to be moving. Um, I swear, like fast ultras and fast ultra events versus slow ultras, I feel like they become different events. Like in a lot of ways, sometimes I feel like going slower is so much more brutal because you need
yeah,
so much more food. You need
yeah. You need a ton more food.
yeah, and you need better gear and you need warmer clothes and I don't know, it's just a lot more mental because at least when you're
Yeah,
moving at a decent clip, you're like, I'm moving. When you're walking,
yeah,
every
yeah,
step,
yeah.
you're like, I could stop. Like,
Yeah, it's interesting. I've done a 100 miler that was once 15 hours and 42 minutes, and then I've done Barkley, of course, which was 57 hours and 42 minutes. So those were both technically 100 milers, but
yeah,
opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of, you know, and I would certainly say, Barkley on one hand was much more difficult in the regard of like the amount of food that you needed, the
mhm,
amount of time that you were out there, the sleep deprivation element, all of that starts to catch up to you versus that 15 hour and 42 was like high risk. Everything was like working. But maybe if I ate too, it was like driving a performance car or something like that. There's all these little things that have to go like exactly right, and you
yeah.
need all this precision and stuff like that. It's very careful. You don't want to bump it against anything versus like an old junk car that can kind of go forever.
You're bumping
Um,
everything.
yeah, you can bump everything. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it's not easier to go faster by any means, but I just feel like it becomes a different event. Um,
yeah.
for sure. Like even slow marathon runners, when it takes them, 4, 5, 6 hours,
Yep.
um, or 11 hours for a 50K, I'm like, you're doing something else now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. You're
you're
doing
doing
something
something
totally
else.
different.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like now it's become something else. You're gonna want more than gels and goos, my friend. Like
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting.
so speaking of fueling, like what did you rely on the most? Like do you have a tried and true fueling strategy for something like that versus
Yeah. I went to a co-op before the race and picked up a bunch of knowing that it was going to get freezing cold at night. My
Mhm.
sister and her husband were there crewing for me. So we bought a bunch of like split pea soup and ramen, and I'm vegan.
Yeah,
And so yeah, it was like split pea soup and ramen and miso soup and lots of just little warm things like that, oatmeal, and things of that nature throughout the night. During the day, it was spring gel, those like awesome sauce ones that are 180 calories. It'd
yeah.
be like two of those on the course somewhere. So during a 5 mile loop, I tried to eat two of those. And then take some what was called Carbo Gain, which is just like a cheap ass maltodextrin mix,
Yeah, yeah.
like a knockoff of Carbo Pro. And I do a swig of that when I got to the aid station, or when I came around each lap.
Mhm.
And I pretty much did that Carbo Gain mix with the two gels for the first 10 hours of the race, and then slowly transitioned to those soups and stuff like that throughout the whole night. And then ate a bunch of, I came in and I don't know what loop it was, like loop 12 or 13 or something like that, somewhere at like midnight or something like that, just ravenous. I think I ate a pumpkin pie, cherry pie or something like that, a whole bag of chips, miso soup, a whole thing of ramen. And I ate like 700 or 800 calories, maybe even 1,000 calories in like the span of like 10 minutes. I
Yeah.
was just super hungry for some reason.
It hits you.
And my favorite part of WTM and what happens in the last, so what I fuel myself on in the last 6 hours of this race, and my wife likes to laugh at me for this, is I call them like trail snacks or whatever, and
Mhm.
they accumulate out there during WTM because it's a loop course,
Yeah.
and they accumulate specifically at the water obstacles. So you'll be doing like, because other people will have, I don't know,
Snacks.
they'll have like snacks and delicious food on them or whatever it is. And like they're going through a water obstacle and the person's like little packet of fruit gushers, which is like, it's in a packet,
Hmm.
will like float out of their wetsuit and you'd be like flipping over a block and then you'll see like a gushers and you're like, score. And then you take the fruit gushers and then you eat them and have a good time. So for the last like 6 hours of the race, I like semi subsist off of like the random gel packets and the random bars and stuff like that other people have dropped.
Yeah.
Because other people aren't eating them. So I don't know.
Right.
I
There
get by.
you are, a course cleanup at that point.
Yeah, I'm
You're
that's how I see it. I'm like, I'm cleaning up the course. I'm good.
you're doing civil
I'm helping out.
service. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's literally, I feel like you're kind of like Sonic, like picking up rings or something. Like
that's what it feels like. It totally feels like because you're like actively like running. Like I don't stop or anything like that to like eat it or anything like that. I'm like actively like I'll come out of that like 40-foot shoot and you like shoot out of the water and you're like disoriented and you're like, oh look, oh, a floating spring gel. Sweet. Or and it's like you go through like chill pickle and you're like freezing as you come through the ice or whatever it is and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, floating half Snickers bar or something. I wouldn't eat a half Snickers bar, but
Yeah, yeah. So like
if it's sealed.
you're like, I have some standards. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
brilliant. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I have on occasion, because I have celiac disease, so for me, like, there's not a lot. Oh, and I'm allergic to nuts, so like, there's a lot of stuff I can't eat. So like,
Gotcha.
dude, if I see gummy worms or gummy bears
Yeah.
or gushers, like,
Oh, those were all over the place.
yeah, those are like, they're like my manna. Like they're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
safe. So when I
Yeah.
see him, I'm eating him. Like no
Yeah.
one's no one is
That's
stopping me.
funny. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but I completely support that. I agree. I think I would be doing the same thing. Just like this little dopamine rush. Hooray. Um, you have a little bit of a delay. Let's see if you come back.
I'm not sure if we froze or something like that. Oh, no, no, we're good.
Yeah, you're back.
Someone had dropped a bag of, I don't know, a bag of Cheetos and they were outside of their bag and I'd passed them for like 3 loops or something like that and they'd gotten squished, but they were looking more appetizing as each loop went on. And I remember on like the 5th loop just being like, all right, F it, I'm eating some Cheetos. And just like had this Cheetos that I'd been watching for like 15 hours. That
You had
that
been
was that was probably the lowest I've gone.
you were developing an attachment to them every single lap.
I was, I
You had to
was, I
honor
was like,
it. You
yeah,
had to
I was
honor
like, all
it.
right, I gotta eat you guys.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Um, no, I like that too. I think moving to solids overnight as well, like you said, like that's when the hunger really hits you. Like I feel like for me, if there's any event or activity that's longer than 6 or 8 hours, I start to get hungry around that time. And by 10 to 12
Yep.
hours in, I need solids. Like the hunger,
Yeah.
the physical hunger becomes so distracting that like I need solids. Um,
Yeah.
and like once I have it, even if I haven't even digested it yet, there's just this feeling of like, all right, I'm gonna make it. Like I don't know if it's like my survival brain, um,
Yeah.
but I hit walls actually probably usually around 4 to 5 hours to be honest. But it's
Okay. Yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
very
I know that
very
happens.
hungry person. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but I think that's great to always have because I was talking to again like a couple athletes going into it and they're like, oh, I've got lots of spring gels, I've got lots of gels, I've got lots of gels, and I was like, do you bring like something, bring something
Yeah,
solid.
you're gonna want some solids eventually in this race
Yeah,
for sure.
have a
Yeah.
grab bag because you don't know what you're gonna want. I mean,
Yeah.
you
And
could
that
get
was exactly what I did with my gels is the gels were the spring gels primarily, but then it was a mix of like other gels and stuff like that. And it was exactly that. Just grab me to something from that bag. And
hmm
then as we progressed, I had a grab bag of more solid foods and stuff. And then to have that mix of soups and things like that that would be warm.
yeah,
And that was, but so I kind of go for mushy solid foods.
yeah,
Something you could feed like an old person with no teeth.
yeah. Well, I mean,
So
when you're cold and your face is cold and you're
yeah, you don't
tired,
want to.
chewing is hard. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
agree. Chewing is really hard. Whenever I
I
see
gotta save
people on
those
the
calories
course
for
eating
running.
like pizza, And I'm like, how are
Yeah,
you
yeah,
chewing
yeah.
that?
Yeah, super hard to eat that. Or like a Cliff Bar. Cliff Bars you just choke on. Ugh. I try to think like all the time, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do Cliff Bars, and then they're impossible to eat during races.
Return to a
So
brick in your mouth.
yeah, they do, especially in cold weather.
Yeah.
So
That's what kills me about people that do trail races and they're like, yeah, I bring a protein bar. And I'm like, how are you chewing that?
yeah, yeah,
How,
man.
how, how are you toothing that? Like,
Yeah,
maybe I'm just
geez,
lazy, but
man.
yeah, for me, a Snickers bar is pushing it. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
if I,
reminds me of there was a race, I forget, it was Arrowhead 135, and so it was 135 miles that you had to do
Mhm.
across northern Minnesota in like -20 to -40 degree weather the whole time, and you pulled the sled for 135 miles,
Oh.
and your options were like, I forget, like everything froze, so you could eat like nuts. Nuts were okay because those couldn't really freeze any further than their nut form, and like pretzels were okay because there wasn't much water in them, and like some
Yeah.
crackers. But then it
Oh,
was like, yeah, it was weird though, because like anything with like a Cliff Bar,
moist.
anything gels or anything like that that you would normally eat, obviously it just couldn't work because it would freeze stupid solid in like -20 degree weather. So yeah,
I'd never even considered that. That's
it
insane.
was a weird race, but
Oh my God. So you're just eating crackers?
yeah,
Or
you're eating like crackers and nuts. Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
God.
And then hoping when you had to have thermoses with your water or whatever it was, but you had to be very careful extracting your water from it when you took a sip, because if your water, like if you like took a sip the wrong way and it like spilled on the lid of your thermos or
It
whatever,
would
your
freeze
water would
shut.
like instantaneously freeze shut, and then you'd be effed and never not able to get water. And the aid stations were like 35 miles apart, which was a suck. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a weird race.
I mean, kudos to the aid station volunteers. Because
Yeah.
they were just sitting out there, I guess.
They were in lodges. Yeah,
Okay.
luckily. So
That's good. Good.
yeah.
That sounds a little bit better. Because I was like, I don't know how they would get anyone sitting out there for that.
Oh no. Yeah, yeah.
Um, no, that sounds brutal. But yeah, that's definitely something I never really considered. I'm used to San Diego where everything melts. Um,
Right, right, right,
you
right,
think
right.
that you're good, and then all the water
Yeah.
in your pack is lukewarm, and the chocolate thing
Yep.
you brought is melted, and like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not so much. I've licked a lot of wrappers in my time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oops. Um,
Yeah.
is so like, going into what you had talked about with this race being a litmus test for you, which even in your description of it, I see it now. Like there's a lot of competitiveness in this race, but there's like you were saying with the brokenness of the running, um, and the penalty loops and the laps, I could see how if you were mentally not in a place where you were able to roll with those punches and you weren't
Yeah.
being compassionate with yourself, this race would be really hard. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so can you talk me through that a little bit, whatever you're comfortable with? Because like
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm seeing it.
So in 2014, I went into this race. I'll give you a little bit of background. In 2014, I went into this race hot off of another event called Tour de Giants, which was a 205 miler that circumnavigated the Italian Alps.
Yeah.
And I was second place there, and was feeling all on top of the world and stuff like that. And entered WTM thinking, who the F are these OCR people? These are a bunch of jokesters. These people aren't athletes. I'm going to kick all their asses and get this 10K easy. And this is just going to be easy payday for me.
Yeah.
You just hop over a bunch of stupid obstacles. I'm going to get 125 miles here and go pick up 10K and be done.
Yeah.
And that was like my not even my goal. That was like my expectation. We could talk about the sort of dangers of goals versus expectations, but that was my expectation going into it, and I totally got just thankfully just rolled on my ass there and just rolled over, and was competitive for 55 miles of the event, and then a dust storm blew in, and it just, the reality of the event and the difficulty of the event started to far outweigh what I had anticipated it being.
Hmm.
And so it started to get more difficult than I thought it would be. and Ryan Atkins turned out to be an actual athlete, and Jung Young Pak turned out to be an actual athlete to my unknown to me. And I was like, oh shit. And, these are actual athletes.
Oh shit.
Um, and, and for those who know, obviously what Ryan Atkins became in the OCR world and everything like that, he was just kind of beginning in 2014 ish.
Mhm.
Um, and, anyways, yeah, just got my butt kicked there, dropped out at 55 miles, 2015, went back to the race, really kind of hungry to win it still, but went with a team. And then my team disassembled at mile 55 of the race due to one of the guys in our team spraining his ankle.
Mm.
So then we disbanded. And in that disbanding, I then entered the individual race and then ran 85 miles that year, placed fourth that year. And then that kind of gave me the oomph to then in 2016 when I did the race again to try to go back and win the thing. And again, really having, unfortunately, I did again redevelop that ego that I'm going to go out here and win this thing, and I'm gonna crush it. And come on, Nick, come on, you can freaking crush this thing. And just a whole lot of ego and expectation, and went into it with that again, ran a really fast 50 miles, led the race for like 50 miles or whatever it was, and then utterly blew up again because of poor pacing and everything like that.
Yeah.
And just had a really sad race. And I remember my last lap, just like I had my agent there, my mom there, my stepdad there, Jade there, my sister there. There's a whole lot of external pressure of people there in addition to myself. And I sort of crumbled under that pressure and the media pressure. NBC was filming it that year. And I remember my final lap that I did, and I hit 75 miles that year and then dropped out. Was just I was just sadly, there's some obstacle where you had to crawl under the barbed wire through the mud or whatever it was. And I just
Yeah.
remember like I was like a sad hot dog at an AM PM or something like that, just kind of going like flop, flop,
Yeah.
flop, flop. And I
I
just
don't mean to
flopped.
laugh, but
Yeah, no, laugh. I was just like flopping face down in the mud, and I just, rather than continue, everyone else would continue rolling because they were trying to get laps or whatever, but I just flop and just lay face down in the mud for like a minute, and then
yeah,
I'd roll over again, and I'd just be like, I'm so done. I hate this
yeah,
race.
yeah.
I hate
You've
my life.
exited. Nick has exited the building mentally. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it's just a sad thing in the mud, and yeah, and so really, this race has always been full of like, it's probably it's probably the number one race in my history of races and hard things and weird things I've done. The number one that I've gone to with expectation, with ego, with, it's probably been my most egotistical race that I've ever done in the past. And so in 2018, to make a long story short, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, along with CPTSD and some other mixed bag of mental illnesses. And along with those sort of, how do I say this in a short way or whatever it is, I had a very, what's called a strong athletic identity, and a person, this is a strong versus a mature athletic identity. And a strong athletic identity is an individual who identifies with ultra running, and running is everything. It's my self-worth, it's who I am, it's what I
Hmm.
do, it's whether I place first in this event is completely spells out my worth as a person. And if I'm not first, well, then I'm a effing worthless person. And that's a strong athletic identity. A mature athletic identity is, oh, I'm Nick, I'm also a husband, I'm also a coach, I'm also a this, and I could be first at this event, and sure, that'd be cool, or I could be last at this event, and whatever, it's just an event and there's going to be more of them.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn to develop over these past 4 or 5 years a mature athletic identity, which with a whole lot of therapy and stuff I've developed. And so the question for me, and the risk, was kind of going back to World's Toughest Mudder, this event that historically had really been the epitome of where I'd really shown this strong athletic identity. And could I go back to that event with a mature athletic identity, and being compassionate and being easy with myself and being loving with myself, and go into this event and perform as good or better than I had ever performed in the past. And that was sort of the question and curiosity there with me. And what it looked like in actual practice was, again, climbing this 40-foot chute or this 40-foot A-frame at like 2 a.m. and, climbing to the top of this thing. And then it was called Shoot Me was the name of the obstacle. And then if you've ever been to a water park, it's like one of those really steep slides where you kind
Oh,
of
I
go
saw
airborne from,
pictures.
yeah, you
Yeah.
kind of go like airborne for like 15 feet and then the slide catches you and then shoots you out over water.
Yeah.
And that was like first obstacle you do at like 2 a.m. or whatever it was. It's the first,
Yeah.
very first obstacle on the loop. And so you climb into that and then just shooting down that and you're like, oh my God, I'm awake. I'm awake. And then coming out of that. And instead of being like, okay, come on, Nick, come on, you piece of crap. Oh, you gotta get going. Oh, you gotta catch this next guy or whatever it is. You gotta keep going. That would be like self-critical Nick of 2016. That would be kind of what the self-talk sounded like then. The self-talk now of 2022 of this race came out of the chute. Oh, Nick, you're so brave. I'm so proud of you. You
Yeah.
did so well there. That was so scary, wasn't it? Big
Yeah.
deal, Nick. Oh, good job. I'm so proud of you. And I'm just giving myself a little hug or something
Yeah.
weird like that. And oh, I'm so proud of you for doing that obstacle, Nick. You're really brave. Good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Just a nice little caring voice that's probably the voice of an amalgamation of past therapists or something. But yeah, and so that was really what the self-talk was throughout the race. And it was stuff like running with my GPS watch for the first 50 miles of the race, but at one point just taking the GPS watch off, even though the battery hadn't died, and just being like, you know what, GPS watch, your metrics aren't serving me anymore. I'm only judging myself when I look at you. I'm done with you. I don't need to know what you're doing anymore. You're not telling me if I'm doing my best or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so just taking that off, and then just trusting that it was a whole lot of what's called self-efficacy of just trusting yourself that what you're doing is the right thing for you in that moment.
Mm.
A whole lot of non-judgment, like taking a penalty for an obstacle and not beating yourself up, not spending a second beating yourself up for the fact that you failed that obstacle, just accepting the fact that, okay, this is what I'm doing now.
Mm.
Okay, I'll do this the weird penalty as efficiently as I can. Okay, now I'll run as efficiently as I can. Oh, look, I caught DJ again. Okay, no
Yeah.
judgment there on catching DJ again. Oh, look, I passed him for a little bit. Okay, no judgment on being ahead or behind him.
Mm.
And just staying in that non-judgmental space was really it was cool in many ways because cool is very much an understatement, but it was an amazing experience for me because it was really like again, the amalgamation of all of my therapy and everything that I've done the last 5 years, and just getting to see like, oh my God, this is all the mindfulness work that I've done. This is all the emotional regulation work that I've done. This
Yeah.
is all the self-compassionate work that I've done. And just getting to apply these skills to an actual event, was so neat and stuff. And yeah, it was really, really, really cool in that regard.
Yeah. I love that. Like, I'm so happy for you because it's not easy at all. None of it. But also to walk into an event that's so traditionally triggering with, like you were saying, so many areas where it's easy to be judgmental. Um, it's so easy because it's things are happening and you can feel like they are happening to you,
Yeah.
or you can be in a place of things are happening and I am also
Yeah.
happening, and
Yep.
okay, and it's
Yeah.
it's a real hard trap to get yourself out of once you're in the this is happening to me space. um and like just knowing that you're able to enjoy that race, and your health and your hard work, and actually get to experience it in all of its
Yeah.
and all of the vibes, I think, like
Yeah.
truly experience it for what it's supposed to be, I think. That's just
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
cool. Like
Yeah.
that's
No, it
no
was,
easy feat.
yeah,
And a
it was,
place
and
so
it,
high.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it was super, super cool. Yeah, it was really neat in that regard. And yeah, it was I think back to it, and it's neat being like, yeah, exactly that. Like my hamstrings got really tight around mile 90 and I started slowing down. I prematurely took off my rain jacket and hoodie.
Hmm.
which caused my body temperature to drop, and that dropped body temperature then seized up my
Stitches.
hamstring and seized up
Yeah.
my calf on the left side, which is why I hit 95 miles with about 15 minutes to go and like leave on the next loop if I wanted to do a 100 miler. But with the seized up leg and stuff like that, I was just like, meh. And I'm good. I'm happy. I'm content. I ran here. I wanted to run here for 24 hours and I did that. Um, yeah, it was interesting. I've got I was originally very happy with that decision. I'm still like 90% happy with that decision. There's still 10% of me that's like, I think a healthy level of me that's like, yeah, I could have probably done more had I not made that wetsuit mistake. But every single race that everybody does, no matter what, is going to have a bone to pick, a something you could have done slightly better or slightly differently. So, I'm considering everything. I'm really really happy with that outcome of the event and everything, and how mostly how I treated myself and how I came out of it and my crew and everything like that. We talk a little bit about, I talked in my sports psychology courses, I talked with one of my professors a little bit about the importance of what's called psychological safety, and having psychological safety with your crew. And what I mean by that is like the freedom and ability to express, um, hey, I want to drop out, hey, I want to slow down, hey, I want to um, just complain for a bit, and to have the ability to be able to safely do that without them pushing their expectations, them pushing their wants and needs onto you. And I really had that around my sister and her husband, which was really delightful, because then with that psychological safety established between myself and my crew, I was able to push myself to my own extreme or my own level, without their expectations and stuff. And I've been in crew situations in the past where I've not had that psychological safety, and I've had uh
Expectation and pressure and
yeah,
mhm.
specifically early in my career I had a lot of that, and
Yeah.
that was really hard.
Yeah, I'm so happy you had that, and kudos to, you said your sister, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is
Who
she pregnant?
is
Is
she's
she?
yeah, she's 6 months pregnant, exactly.
That's
So yeah.
amazing. That's that's amazing. But yeah, to
Yeah,
have that love and support in that moment, and just have someone being like, "What do you need?"
yeah,
And to be like asked that candidly, sometimes you're like, "I need to keep going, I think," or "I need to stop."
yeah, and it being okay and no judgment cast on you if either,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it just
Hmm.
like they love you either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
I
is super cool.
Discussing that with athletes is always really interesting, the pressure that we put on ourselves because we think that our loved ones want to see us do well and they want to see us
Yeah,
win. And I would say
right,
99% of the time, our loved ones want to see us happy.
right, right.
They don't
Totally.
care where we place as long as we're
No, they don't.
happy.
Yeah,
And
it's a number.
yeah, these
So
people will like gut themselves and I'm like, dude, nobody cares. Like you're miserable.
yeah. I
They
was
want
gonna
to
show you
see
the back of my laptop with Viata's sticker there that says nobody cares. But yeah,
that's
I love that.
yeah,
I love that sticker.
it's so true. It's so true. And I mean, even for myself, that's been a really difficult battle because my health is always weird. Like
Hmm.
it's up and down. I still struggle with committing to sign up for events because I don't know how I will be when I get there. There's no
Hmm.
stability. So being in a place where I can, when I first started, like I just wouldn't sign up for things because quitting or not showing up to me was so negative that
Mm.
I would tear myself apart even if there was no way I could have physically competed safely. Um,
Okay.
or like I wasn't physically prepared at that point for some reason to perform well enough to meet my goals for the event. Not even my expectations, but just like my goals. Um,
Okay.
I would tear myself apart. I would be like, oh my God, I suck. I'm lazy. You know, I'm never going to be an athlete. I'm not trying hard enough. And there's always that like thought in the back of your head. It's like, I could have pushed through. I could have pushed through. And the more hard things I've pushed through, I've realized now, I guess this is my maturing where I'm like, oh, I can do really hard things. I can suffer. I just don't want to.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not what I
Yeah.
want out of this.
Yeah.
I know I could be in pain and miserable for hours and still complete something. I've done it. I
Right.
didn't like it. Like
Right.
that's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
it doesn't bring me joy.
Yeah.
Like
I don't need to prove that to prove my worth or to prove myself as a
Yeah,
person anymore or anything like that. So that's a beautiful
yeah,
spot to be. That's a really nice spot to be. Glad
yeah.
you've arrived there.
Thank you. Me too. I'm having a lot more
Yeah.
fun now because of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely been nowhere near the same experience, especially because I have never had um, an athletic baseline that would cause pressure. I think for me, it's more of this self-applied pressure to be something, and then
Sure.
realizing that what I am right now is what I should be concerned with. Um,
Okay. Okay.
and and getting more process oriented and enjoying my training more and choosing training that
Mm,
means more to me.
mm.
That whole process, when you said, being a sport athlete and then an actually mature athlete, I did have a phase in the middle where I became self-identified
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
someone
Very,
who,
very strong athlete. Yeah. Strong
yeah,
athletic identity.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't very athletic, but I wanted to be, because I thought that
Yeah.
that's what people wanted from me, or that was how I was going to
Okay.
earn their respect.
Yeah. That's a lot of self pressure.
Yeah, and like now I'm just like, yeah, I can't do that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't wanna. Like, no.
Yeah.
I remember I did this event at my gym, Deca. It's just a Deca strong. There wasn't even any running. And someone came up to me and they're like, "Oh, I've heard lots of really cool things about you. You're gonna crush this, right?" And I was like, honestly, I haven't really trained for it. So I'm just gonna have fun today. Um,
Hmm.
and she was like, "Well, you need to beat you need to beat the other coach. You need to beat him, or else I'm going to be upset with you." And I was like, "Is this supposed to be motivating? Are you threatening me, or is this
Yeah.
motivating? Because I'm confused." Like, I wasn't even
Yeah.
bothered by it, but there was this
Yeah.
voice in the
Yeah.
back of my head that was like, "Oh, this would have messed you up. This
Yeah.
would have made you feel bad for like
Yeah.
a while." And
Yeah.
being able
Yeah.
to just be like, "What?
Yeah.
Are you being
Yeah.
helpful?"
Good.
Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. And
don't
just
think
be
this
able
is.
to sort of question that in a non-judgmental sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
Good for
want me
you.
to have fun
Yeah.
today?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Interesting. And it's interesting how like good performance for the most part, when you look at performance excellence, it falls out of maybe the literature and the research behind this, it falls out of maybe 10-20% of that sort of extrinsic what is it, extrinsic outcome oriented type of pressure. Maybe that's 10, maybe that's 20% of your performance goals for that. But in the long term, in the long haul, and people who are in these events for life or for have a long career of performance excellence, a lot of that's going to come from intrinsic motivation. A lot of that is going to come from stuff like having fun throughout the event, having a
Yeah.
good time throughout the event. And like, how do you ensure that yeah, performance comes from good, excellent performance. I would argue, if it's the Ariana who's going into the Deca, who's, worried about placing first and stuff like that, not having a fun time. And like, yeah, you might have one or two good performances, but eventually you're going to get an injury, or you're going to crumble under that, or you're not going to meet your expectations. And then
Yeah.
you're going to have a horrible time. Or, you can more consistently be in second, third, fifth, or whatever it is a few times, slowly climb over time, and then perpetually have fun and built on that intrinsic motivation and everything, and you'll be in it for a lot longer.
Yeah. And staying healthy too. I think that's such a huge, when you recognize your athletic ability in that moment and you're able to fully use it with no pressure and no negative feelings, you also avoid unnecessary, I think, stress or strain or
Yep.
just unnecessary risks, because
Yeah.
your self-worth is not predicated on a certain outcome. It's just,
Yeah.
hey, I'm here in this body with this fitness right now, experiencing these things, and I'm going to take care
Yeah.
of myself so I can keep
Yeah.
doing this. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, I've found that for me, and even for just a lot of athletes that I've coached, like getting them to that much more mindful space where you're like, are you having fun? Do you want to be here? Because if you
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
you don't have to. You can go
Yeah. Nobody
home.
cares. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You could just go home
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
no one's gonna
And
know.
that was a big difference. That was a big difference, between like, and I told my sister Nara and her husband again before the race, like, same kind of thing. Like, yeah, I'd like to have a good time this whole time, and I'd like to make it the full 24 hours. And it was interesting because that full 95 miles that I did out there, I had fun pretty much the whole thing. I didn't, there were parts that sucked and stuff like that, but
Of
no more
course.
than that. But it was like the fun kind of suck.
Yeah.
Um,
You're like, what
and
is
then
happening?
yeah, the one lap that like wasn't fun anymore really was that final lap where my hamstring and calf locked up, and I was just like, okay, this isn't fun anymore. I'm kind of done,
Yeah.
and then I was done.
Yeah.
It was like, luckily that coincided with the race being done as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was I certainly didn't feel any tie or any need to um I feel like even if I was in like third or second place, had I been in a higher position, I still would have done the same thing and just been like, okay, I'm good. Yeah, if you guys
Yeah.
want to go on and compete and go beat me, go for it. I'm good here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
And just
happy.
being cool with that. Like I'm here and you're there. And that's cool.
Good job.
Go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for
You
you.
go, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no,
Um,
I'd not been in a position like that in the past where it had been like, just like, no, I gotta crush you, I gotta steal your soul, I gotta, make you, I gotta, what was it? I was always like saying, I need to beat this person so bad that they quit the sport and never want to do it again. It was
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. Yeah, just not having that, realizing so much of that talk was my freaking borderline personality, just like
Mhm.
latching on to that identity so super strong.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I'd imagine too, like even that self-talk, wanting to shame a person upon losing, that was probably really closely tied to your feelings of shame
Oh,
about,
totally. Well,
yeah,
yeah, 100 just projecting my
yeah,
feelings onto someone else. Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
yeah. I always see that a
Yeah.
lot in, unfortunately, in the sports space, in certain sports, not many,
Yeah.
but there are certain sports where it really comes out, like road cycling. Um,
Okay.
like it's just rampant.
We're just like, I'm gonna crush you into oblivion. Da, da, da,
People
da,
are
da.
mean.
Yeah. Okay.
They're just
Man.
mean.
Jeez. Okay.
I think it's because
Yeah.
honestly in ultra there's shared suffering no matter what. Like
There
you're out
is.
in the woods.
And it's yeah. Yeah, you're out in the woods and you're sharing it together and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you're both
It's not
suffering. And
glamorous. Yeah.
no, yeah, and you can make these like really man, what was I gonna say? Kind of with WTM too, like like your friends, but your friends like you've known each other for 10 years, even though you've only known each other for two laps,
Yeah.
like I considered, I don't know, like I'd hang out with DJ like he's a 10-year-old friend now or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I've known him for a few laps of a race, but I shared intimate moments with him per se,
Yeah. And he helped
So
you through.
it
Yeah.
was, yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's funny how that kind of expedites the friendship making. So
Yeah. The
yeah,
community
whereas I could see
atmosphere.
that in road cycling or something like that, not being there and it being a little bit more cutthroat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely interesting to see the departure, when you move from road cycling to mountain biking.
Okay.
And now you're in mountain biking and everyone's like buddies.
Yeah.
There's nothing but
Yeah.
stoke. And they're like, oh,
Okay.
you didn't fall. That's rad.
Yeah, because you
Everyone,
versus the trail all of a sudden.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. A common enemy. Interesting.
Maybe that's all we need.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm so happy for you. And I'm so excited that you not only had that opportunity, but were in a place where you were able to fully embrace it. Because I mean, if you weren't in a place where you weren't able to fully embrace it, that's okay too. I think we all have all those
Yeah. Yeah.
times. But just the fact that you were there and you were like, you know what? I'm gonna expose myself to this test and I'm gonna have a good
Yeah.
time doing it.
And
Like, what a
that's
cool
exactly what it
place.
was. That
Yeah,
was exactly what it was just like, and it was for me like almost, again, just summarizing that, it was so much okay, I've battled mental illness now for 4 or 5 years. I really want to like show that I'm winning this battle.
yeah.
How do I show myself that I'm winning this battle? Okay,
Hmm.
I'll pick the most triggering race of my past and I'll go
Yeah.
race it again. And I'll see if I can, even if I didn't do better, even if I had done like 50 miles, but I came out of it with a positive attitude, that still would have been a win.
Yep.
But the fact that it's like icing on the cake or whatever, that like I got 95, I did the best I've ever done.
Hmm.
And in a positive regard, just had a positive experience there and everything like that. And just that to me showed me that just how much progress I've made with my mental illness since,
Yeah.
really having a strong athletic identity of the past and everything. So yeah.
Yeah. And how much power all the tools you've learned have. Like,
Yeah, no, it's
to,
been super cool. It's
yeah,
been super cool. And it's been so neat to both study be getting my master's concurrently here in sports psychology, and then having had all that therapy experience and everything like that,
yeah,
and mainly in dialectical behavioral therapy, and kind of meshing the two of those, and then meshing what I can legally at this point with coaching.
yeah,
And no, it's been a really cool combination to just take a look at some of the athletes that I work with, their motivations and reasons for doing events and races and stuff like that, looking at their relationship with the sport and stuff, and
yeah.
um, helping a lot of athletes, specifically the ones that had to do WTM. We worked a lot on self-talk, and we worked a lot on cognitive reframing, which is, thinking like, oh my God, I've got this obstacle, I'm never going to make it through, I'm never going to get further. How do we actively reframe that to something that's instead of permanent, pervasive, personal, you want temporal, general, specific,
Mhm.
or something like that, some acronym like that. And just reframing that to something more positive, like positive, non-judgmental. I am exactly what you were saying earlier, like I am here. uh Honestly, it comes across as like really simple sentences like that most of the time. It's like, I am here, race is race, slide is slide, water is temperature. Because you can't call the water cold or hot or
No.
anything like that. That's a judgment on the water. So you're just like, water is wet,
Yeah,
skin
yeah.
is wet, hand is not responding.
Yeah. Hand is fuzzy.
Hand is fuzzy. No judgment on that.
I mean,
Knee is a feeling.
and I think
Yeah,
in
it's
doing that,
strange.
in that practice too, you're pulling yourself out of that place, but I'm sure there's some humor in it too, which is so
Oh, there's
important.
total humor in it there. Yeah, yeah. No, I was cracking up, like coming out of like that's the main vivid image that I have of WTM, is like coming out of the shoot and like giving myself a little hug while everyone else is like ooh, zombieing along, and I'm like giving myself a little hug, and I'm like, oh, you're so brave, Nick, you're so good, and talking to myself like I'm cheering on like a 5-year-old who scraped his knee or something.
Yeah,
You know.
we all have inner 5-year-olds. Um,
Yeah,
One of the
yeah. So
things I
it's
say all
comforting.
the
I was
time, like,
comforting that 5-year-old.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh, there was a time in our lives where everyone clapped, cheered, and cried when we took one clumsy step, and
Yeah,
we're still that
exactly.
person. We're still
Exactly.
that person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm
Uh,
just cheering him on.
yeah, exactly. Good job,
Yeah.
buddy. There's
Yeah,
so much
exactly.
power in that, like shamelessly just being like, I am doing a good job.
There is, if you actually believe that to your core and everything like that, there's a
Yeah.
lot of power in self-talk like that. And that
Hmm.
is like cliche or trite or dumb as that may sound or whatever, some people's judgment on that. It helps so much more than like, come on, you piece of crap, come on, legs, come
Yeah.
on, this, come on, that,
Yeah.
try harder, push harder, do this harder, do
Bleed.
this faster,
Yeah.
bleed. Yeah, it's like, nope.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think as humans, even though we all think that feels really cool, um, I don't think many people actually positively respond to that more than they would positively respond to a more positively framed, positively delivered motivation. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure people respond to that, um, but I'm sure if you did something different, they would probably perform better and they would
yeah,
probably be
yeah, yeah,
happier.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. So it's
yeah, it's
it's interesting
working.
flipping it from the it's interesting flipping it into the coaching perspective, and it's been interesting being in that coaching realm. That's kind of the last thing
Yeah.
I'll say, is just it's been interesting to be in that coaching perspective since working so much on positive self-talk and strong athletic identity, like identifying quickly like, oh, this athlete, they're coaching with me because of who I was in like 2013 and 2014, and they saw me like doing the world's hardest races and
Yeah.
were attracted to that kind of version of me, and they're looking
Hmm.
for that version of me. And then they get me today, and I'm like, here's a self-talk questionnaire, here's how to start talk positive to yourself, here's a bunch of self-compassion meditations that I want you to start listening to, and
Hmm.
oh, how do you talk to yourself? I want you to record yourself 5 times on this next run, and about how you talk to yourself. Oh, okay, see, you're talking to yourself this way, you need to change this. And then they're like,
Yeah.
what the hell, you're
Yeah.
supposed to be like David Goggins, come on, Nick.
Yeah. I'm
But
just supposed to be running. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we get all into that. So no, it's fun.
and you're making their lives so much better because I've always found that sport, and then from coaching, nutrition, food, it's where people like to exert the most control. in the ways
Yeah.
that they know how, and then giving them alternate methods of control, um, or the freedom to not control.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
it always helps every other area of their life,
Yeah.
in a very scope safe way. People just start implementing these things, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I just don't
Yeah.
care. I don't care what Nancy says at work. I'm doing a good job." And you're like, "You
Sweet.
learned that on your run. Yay."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, Nick, I think I've taken enough of your time. This has been excellent. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming
Been very,
on.
very, very easy to chat with you. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's been
Thank you.
awesome. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you, and I'm just
Thank
excited to
you.
see what you decide that is going to bring you joy in 2023. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
Yeah,
super excited for it.
totally.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Of course.